So how does Sovryn tackle this problem of agency capture? Well, I think Sovryn does this in a number of ways, and I think Sovryn is unique in trying to tackle agency capture. So one of the key ways, and obvious ways that we do this, is by building on Bitcoin. Bitcoin miners, especially when it comes to sidechains, are far less incentivized and have far less ability to participate in agency capture versus proof-of-stake validators. It goes far beyond that. It also is the way that the Sovryn ecosystem, or Bitocracy, is governed. So Bitocracy, even though it has stakers, is not a proof-of-stake system. It's a proof-of-commitment system, or POC. And the reason is that you don't just stake momentarily and gain voting power, but rather you have to place your stake at risk. You have to commit your stake for a long period of time. The longer you commit, the more voting power you have, but also the higher risk that you're taking, and the more your incentives are aligned, not with the immediate situation, but with the long-term value of the ecosystem. This creates a different set of incentives, and it creates a set of incentives which is much more difficult to capture and which is much more aligned with the long-term value of the system. And then we can use that to also reduce other types of systemic risk and agency capture, which start to sound a little bit more like moral hazard. So for example, there is no reliance on a centralized stablecoin in Sovryn, but it's more than that. As a ecosystem, we have chosen to construct at great cost various methods to make sure that our ecosystem can never be infected by a single dominant stablecoin. So some of the examples of this is the utilization of XUSD and the ability for Sovryn as an ecosystem to choose which stablecoins to allow in and which not. The introduction of the sovereign dollar will enhance our ability to do that, and we can, as a community, choose to effectively allow only the sovereign dollar to be utilized within Sovryn. And another example of this is the way that when assets are bridged over to Sovryn, they are aggregated. So when you're using Sovryn, you don't see several different types of ETH coming across different bridges, but you see an aggregated ETH-S. That actually isn't a mechanism for reducing risk. It's a mechanism for improving user experience, but it goes to demonstrate how if we operate as a self-regulatory regime, we can remove the potential for certain systemic problems, some of them user interface-based, but some of them risk-based, within Sovryn. And Sovryn is unique as an ecosystem in that its center is not a new chain, but its center is a governance system. What makes the ecosystem is the governance system, and therefore, as an ecosystem, we can create a free market, but choose to have certain types of activity not be allowed within the system. And I think over time, as we continue to invest in this, and as we continue as a community to educate ourselves around that, the differential between Sovryn as a self-regulating ecosystem and the other ecosystems will continue to increase.